We're back. It's another episode of Butt Crack Cycles. Sitting out here in the woods behind my little shop, and after we get done filming this intro, we're gonna walk inside and get started working on my bike. My bike in question this time is my Ironhead Sportster. Returning viewers of this channel will recognize this bike. This is my 1983 Sportster. I ride this bike a lot, and I rode it a few days ago and it started giving me some trouble. So 2 or 3 days ago, I jumped on the bike and I went to go meet my buddy Chris. We were gonna go ride around. I rode the bike from my house to our meetup spot, which is 16, 18 miles away. And the bike run perfect the whole way over there. Everything was great. Cut the bike off, waited around 5 or 10 minutes for him to show up. We stood around BSing in the parking lot for a couple minutes, then we jumped back on the bikes and go riding. Well, pretty much immediately I had problems. We get to the very first red light and the light turns green, and I start letting the clutch out and start giving it a little gas, and it starts spitting and sputtering and popping back on me kind of through the carburetor, like it's running lean or running out of fuel. So I rode it up into my building. It's been sitting there for a couple of days, and yeah, I don't know what's wrong with it. I thought about filming this intro after I had figured out what was wrong with it, so I could just be like, on this episode of Butt Crack Cycles we do this. But I actually think it's more fun this way, where y'all come with me as I troubleshoot. So I'm gonna shut up, and that's what we're gonna do. Let's go work on a bike. So the first thing that I want to check on this bike is I'm going to pull the vent line up here from behind the carburetor and see if it's wet on the end. Which it is. That's oil. But it doesn't smell like gas. This bike has a very slight leak here at the bottom of the front pushrod tube. I need to fix. I've just been putting it off. It's not that bad, but it is slowly getting worse. And it kind of slings back. So that wetness there was just oil. The reason I did that is because when I walked out here into the shop and opened the doors, like I said, the bike had been sitting for a couple of days. It kind of smelled like gas in here, and it usually doesn't. But I also have a chainsaw at the back of the shop that I took apart a couple of days ago in here, so I'm kind of thinking that gas smell is from the chainsaw, not this bike. The next thing that I want to do, my gut tells me we've got one of maybe 3 things going on here. Number 1 is intake boots, intake seals. This whole spitting and popping and not taking throttle and coughing back through the carburetor, that type of a lean out, especially when you crack the throttle open, is like a classic symptom of bad intake boots. We'll check that first, crank the bike up and spray some carburetor cleaner around the boots and see if we can get the engine to rev up as it sucks that additional fuel in. Thing number 2 is timing. I have had an issue before on this motorcycle where it has broken the tit off of the back of the little timing cup. This bike has electronic ignition since it's an 83 model. And that gave me all kinds of troubles. It seemed like carburetor troubles, but really it was an ignition timing issue. So we might end up looking at that. And number 3 is that there's actually something wrong inside the carburetor. Maybe some more trash is in it, etc., etc. But we're going to do the first thing I talked about first, quickest and easiest, which is going to be just crank this bad boy up and grab a can of carburetor cleaner and start spraying around the intake track and see if we can find a leak. Oh, it helps when you turn the key on. So as you can see there, we definitely have an intake leak. I'm not quite sure how well that comes through on camera, but you can see me counting down with my fingers, 1, 2, 3, and then I would spray. I was taking my thumb and pointing down, and the engine RPM was dropping down every time I would spray it, especially on that front cylinder. And then I'd point my finger back up, or my thumb rather, back up, because that engine RPM would pick back up to where it had been idling at. Doesn't really matter about if you spray and the engine comes up or you spray and the engine goes down. It's immaterial at this point in time. We'll readdress resetting the carburetor, idle mixture, etc., later. All we care about right now is that we have introduced an outside substance to what should be a sealed intake tract, and the engine RPM has responded, which means we have a leak. So I'm gonna yank this carburetor off real fast. Whoa. I'm just scratch up my air cleaner cover. I'm not gonna shoot. I'm not gonna film pulling the carburetor off. Man, I got butterfingers today. So we'll pull the carburetor off, pull the intake manifold off, and I'll meet y'all over on the workbench here in just a minute after some movie magic. Okay, so we've got a carburetor pulled off. I didn't film it. I think that's fairly self-explanatory. Fuel line off, throttle cable off, vacuum line for the VOS switch if you still have it, choke cable off, and undo your 2 bolts for the mounting flange. And that leaves you with the intake manifold. If you are new to the older stuff, this looks a little different than probably what you're used to seeing on like an Evo engine where you have the bolted flanges. So that's what it looks like. We're going to grab a socket, zip those out, pull the boots off, pull the manifold off, throw it on the workbench, and inspect it. Go from there. Manifold's on the workbench over here. There's the carburetor. And man, these things are freaking doinked. Look at those. Holy crap. I was even riding this thing. I don't even see how this bike ran like that. That's like one of the worst sets of intake boots. Look at that. It's torn completely in two. That I've seen in a long time, and these are not that old. These are only a couple of years old. That one's not as bad as the other one, but yeah, look, it's split in two. These are terrible. I can look through my notes and see, but I think I put these on maybe 2.5 years ago, right when I first got the bike. And I'm guessing the bike I've probably put, I don't know. Hang on, I got my notebook right here. Give me a second. So I came outside, so we didn't have to listen to the air conditioner running in the background. And I double checked my little notebook. I've put about 7,000 miles on that bike in the last 2 years. And I think those seals should have lasted a little bit longer than that. That's really not that much mileage, though. I say that, I know people, that bike's an 83. I know people who have 93s or 2003s that don't even have 7,000 miles on the bike, period, over the entire lifespan of the bike. But you know, I have other motorcycles. If you're a regular viewer of this channel, you know that I'm always kind of buying and fixing and selling old Harleys, and some of them stick around for longer than others. And so my riding mileage over the course of a year gets spread out over 2 or 3 or sometimes even 4 bikes. But point being, those intake seals, those intake boots were not that old. Understand that these Ironheads do vibrate more and run a little hotter than the newer stuff, so they're probably a little bit harder on the intake boots than the newer stuff might be. But man, those look terrible. So I've already ordered some new ones. We're gonna wait and see when those show up and put it all back together. And I definitely want to spend some time double checking that intake manifold to cylinder head alignment, because that's pretty important on one of these bikes. I really hope those seals come in soon though, because my shovel head is down right now too, which means I do not have a rideable motorcycle, and that sucks. The rooster agrees. So while I'm waiting on the manifold seals to actually show up, despite having paid extra for expedited shipping, but that's a whole nother story, decided to want to take a little look at our intake manifold alignment here. And this is going to be hard to get on camera because it's so dark in here, but you can see we don't really have much of a gap on that side, and come over to the other side come on, about the same. I'll try and get all of this together at once, but essentially what we're looking for here is on the manifold. This is a later style Ironhead, so it uses what they call the rubber band style seals, where it goes around the outside circumference of the manifold and the cylinder heads. Earlier ones used the O-ring style. Anyways, you just want where your manifold butts up against both your heads in here. Push it up against one side where it's nice and flat, and then come over and look at the other side and see what the gap is. Is it tilted one way, up or down, left or right, whatever. Like I said, this is hard to see because it's so dark in here, but y'all get the idea. If you have a goofed up gap, you can sometimes loosen your cylinder base nuts and leave the heads and the valve train and everything in, and sometimes you can get a little tweak or a turn on this. Other times you have to like really start taking stuff apart, but it's generally worth doing in order to get that to line back up. But like I said, you know, it's again pretty hard to see, but I have a very small gap on each side, but it's a pretty consistent and even gap on both sides, which means that this should seal up really well. So wait on some parts now that we feel pretty confident that that's going to work good for us. Well, the post office must have heard us talking bad about them, because our parts showed up today, which is fantastic. I'm literally filming this like an hour from the last clip. This is the tight seal kit. It's from F&A Cycles in Florida. I'm in no way, shape, or form affiliated with them. I'm just showing y'all what I put on. It's pretty straightforward. You just got your rubber band, your rubber silicone, and 2 good high quality, fairly thin stainless steel hose clamps. You could probably come up with this whole set yourself. Truck supply or industrial supply house should have this style silicone. This is like what a charge air pipe is made out of, but I don't know. This set's like $50 or whatever. To just be able to buy everything and not have to go track it all down is probably worth it. Gets really good reviews. I actually have this same set of intake boots on the shovel head right there on that Super E, and it's been doing good for me. So enough yapping, let's throw this on there. All right, so our intake is on there. I found a light. I'm trying to hold the light and the camera and point all at the same time, so sorry if this comes through a little goofy. Anyways, this can be a little bit tricky to do. The directions say either put one intake boot on the head, put the other on the manifold, and then sort of roll it in, or you can put both of the boots on both of the heads at once and then roll the manifold into it. That's the way I did it on this one. I'm pretty sure that's how I did it on my shovel head too. If I'm remembering correctly, you can kind of take your finger and get inside of there and make sure you jump the boots up over the outside of the manifold. So the next thing we are going to do is I'm going to grab my angle finder, and we're going to make sure that we are at the same angle here between the carb mounting bracket and the intake before we tighten this down. All right, so what we want to do here is, obviously this carb bracket right here is what holds the carburetor up, right? And in our case, it's bolted to the back of the air filter backing plate. So we want this bracket and our intake manifold to be in the same plane at the same angle, so that when we put the carburetor back on there, it's not twisting the manifold up or down and pulling against those seals and contributing to a shortened lifespan. So we're going to take an angle finder. I've showed this trick on this channel before, but you may or may not have seen that episode. And we're just going to get a reading of the intake manifold, and then about 82. And we're going to come over here and double check it on this. And that's like 79. So we're off a few degrees between the two, which means we just need to roll the intake manifold back a few degrees. You get the idea. Check it here, check it there, check it here, check it there, and just move everything around until it's happy. And then once you got it all, happy and jiving with each other, then grab your screwdriver and actually tighten down your clamps. So we'll do that now. Make sure. And after you've gotten it all tight, go back through and just double check it again. You know, make sure you didn't move anything when you were tightening it with your screwdriver. It's a simple, easy, quick thing to do that makes, in my experience and in my opinion, that makes a good difference in the lifespan of these boots. And I'll be honest with y'all, I didn't do that the last time I put these boots on because I did not know that then. That's something that I've learned in the last couple of years, and it's been helpful for me. So now I know, and I'm doing this job again on this bike after a few years, and I can do it better now the second time, and so I want to pass that knowledge off to y'all because I don't know everything. I learn something new every day, and maybe this will be a new thing that you can learn. So I'm gonna turn the camera off, keep working, and throw all this back together. Y'all don't need to watch me put a carburetor back on. Okay, so the carburetor is back on the motorcycle. Everything is tight, everything's hooked up. I left the air cleaner off. This carburetor has had the little plug on the top knocked off of it, drilled out of it, so that you can actually get to the idle mixture screw. You will start this thing up and spend a minute playing with the idle mixture if necessary. And then once I feel like I've gotten it, where I'm happy with, I'll give it a couple wraps on the throttle, make sure it seems like it takes throttle good. I will go ahead and also leak check this thing again before we take it for a test ride. I'll grab a can of starting fluid and spray around that manifold again. Once again, I forgot to turn the key on. I don't know why I do this so much. And the key's not even in this bike. I took it out. Let me go get it. Okay, let's try this again. Underway, and I don't think we really need to go for a very long test ride. I might ride this bike a little bit longer than actually I need to for the purposes of testing the intake manifold fix. I can already tell you right now it's fixed. Didn't have any leaks when we tested it in the shop there. And even just a little bit of coming down my street here, rolling onto it, it would have been backfiring and popping back through the carburetor already. I also, I got a note that in my video about fixing the trash in the idle jet in this car, somebody, I don't remember who, wrote a comment and was like, hey man, check your intake boots, they might be leaking. And I was like, I don't think they are. It wasn't popping and spitting back through the carburetor at that point in time. It just kind of nosed over, didn't have good power. And I wrote them back and I was like, I don't think so. They're only like 2 years old, man. There's no way they're leaking. Well, I was wrong. Whoever that was, you were right. That probably was actually what was starting to slowly rear its head at that point in time. What's amazing about that is that was probably 700 or 800 miles ago, maybe even 1,000 miles ago. And it's amazing that this bike has basically been running fine since then. And then just all of a sudden, out of the blue, it was spitting and popping and coughing back through the carb, and it was like unrideable. It was like a light switch on this bike. But yeah, just pulling it up the hill there, rolling into it, it would have been popping and spitting back on me. So I'd say that this is fixed. I'm gonna go ride it some more. I'll probably double down on my test ride and do one of my little Wednesday midweek moto vlogs. I've been starting to do those lately on this channel. I'm trying to do 2 videos a week. My Sunday episode, I've been trying to keep to where it's like stuff like this, you know, where we're working on a problem and fixing something.
and then do my midweek episode on Wednesdays. Comes out Wednesday evening, and those are kind of been, you know, my moto vlogs where I ride around and talk. Yeah, that's really it for this episode. Thanks for sticking with me. Thanks for watching this stuff. I appreciate each and every one of you who watches my channel and leaves comments, and everybody who subscribes. And thanks for anybody who has ever bought anything off my web store. Yeah, just appreciate all of you. Anyways, I will catch y'all on the flip side. See you on the next episode. Bye.